Gillian, good morning. You newcomers have no idea what that means, but that's all right. Gillian asked me why I'd been a Rotarian for 60 years and why I joined Rotary in the first place. I was 24, I think, or 25. I joined because my father was a Toledo Rotarian, my grandfather was a Toledo Rotarian, my father-in-law was a Toledo Rotarian, and my grandfather-in-law was a Toledo Rotarian. I didn't think there was any other life. But I mainly have stayed a Rotarian, I think, because I'm so proud of what Rotary does, what I've witnessed it to do in the 60 years I've been here. It's absolutely amazing. Just to touch on a couple points, you're going to be sorry you asked me up here, but because I always tell stories. But I remember Toledo Rotary's 75th anniversary happened to coincide with the year that Rotary International announced their campaign for Polio Plus for their upcoming 100th anniversary. And everyone was assigned a quota, every club, as to what they were to kick in to kick off Polio Plus. And our goal was $85,000, which I thought was a hell of a lot of money, but you know, we do our best. And a group of us got together and we planned a gala dinner with speeches, same damn speakers, they're always up there at the same time, and a symphony concert. And we invited the world's most famous violinist, Itzhak Perlman. And Itzhak Perlman just happened to be the world's most famous polio victim. And that was a night. Instead of our goal of $85,000, that night alone we raised $285,000. That's why I'm proud of Toledo Rotary. Going right along with that, most recently, many of you remember the 100th anniversary of Toledo Rotary. We did pretty good. We spent a few years, raised over $300,000. Well, we raised $450,000, and to buy a park for the Metro Parks in downtown Toledo. Metro Parks never had a park in downtown Toledo, as you all know. And once they get done with the high-level bridge, they're going to build a beautiful park with shelter, running track, fishing piers, lunch for downtown workers. Fabulous place. That was our 100th. But then I got to go back to the beginning. Some of you newer members haven't heard this story. You older members will remember it. I have to tell you the story once again of Alva Bunker and Charles Fieldbach. In 1915, when Charles Fieldbach was president of the Toledo Rotary Club, the district nurses, by name Emma Roberts, brought to Rotary a young man she had found in an alley living behind the house of his drunken father. His mother had 12 kids, and Alva Bunker was born without any hands or feet. He spent most of his time in an alley on a skateboard he'd made with a roller skate and a piece of 1x6. He couldn't read or write. He's 14 years old. He couldn't read or write. He couldn't smile. He could barely talk. The Rotary Club took on this challenge, Charles Fieldbach in particular, took this young man up to Detroit to a hospital that could treat him and help him. And in 3 or 4 years, they outfitted him with arms and legs, taught him to read and write, taught him to smile. He never knew how to smile. And taught him to walk. And 4 years later, he walked into the Rotary Club of Toledo, Ohio, across the floor, climbed the steps up to the podium, and thanked the Rotarians of Toledo for what they had done for him. If that doesn't bring a little dampness to your eye, you're not human. But that one thing, that one young man and that one Rotary president started something that went around the Rotary world. Toledo Rotary adopted the theme at that point of serving the handicapped, the crippled children we called it in those days. And every other Rotary club in the world, of which there are, 35,000, their principal thrust of service above self is serving the handicapped. And it started right here in little old Toledo, Ohio. I think that's amazing. Not only that, this Toledo Society for Handicapped started in the Rotary Club here. The Ohio Society for the Handicapped started in Toledo, Ohio. The National Society for the Handicapped started in Toledo, Ohio. We now call it Easter Seals. That whole worldwide movement was started here by one crippled young man and a bright Rotary Club. I think that's amazing. I can change gears now and dry my eyes because I get moved every time I tell that story. Of course, you know the Rotary book, and I call it the Rotary book. The book we all got together. It turned out it was started by Walt McGee, who wanted somebody to liven up his first couple of meetings as president, to tell a couple of history stories. Are you trying to get rid of me? I'm not done yet. So we put together a book. I wanted to put a bunch of Xerox copies of my talks on paper, with a staple in a corner, but Jeff Roberts would have none of it. We had a committee. We decided to put together a coffee table book, an expensive coffee table book, and we printed 10,000 copies, and I said, who the hell's going to ever buy one except our wives? But we've sold most of them, and we've raised somewhere in the neighborhood, I'm told, of $150,000 for the foundation through the profits from that book. And it was thanks to Walt McGee and his wife Julia, who did enormous amounts of work. And Debbie Monaghan, whose company with Steve put together the book and promoted it and put it in order. And of course, Jeff Roberts, who would have nothing but to make it a big, fancy book. And that book created a lifetime job for me in my senior years. I've given, believe it or not, over 600 talks on those history stories in that book. And I have sold Toledo Rotary in every one of them so that more and more people know what we do here. George Bernard Shaw, you remember, he said, where's Rotary going? And he answered his own question. He said, they're going to lunch. If you're a Rotarian that shows up when it's convenient for meetings, don't join committees, don't get active, don't participate in the Good Fellowship Foundation. That's what they used to call it. We call it the Rotary Foundation now. Maybe you're in the wrong place. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. But wear this pin. I'm about to get a new one. I've got several. Never go out without the pin. I don't care whether you're in Toledo or Perrysburg or Maumee or Seattle or Boston or London or Paris. When people see you with that pin on, they immediately make a judgment that you're a special person. You're a person that treats your community with service, that you're a leader in your profession or your business. It's an assumption that people make, and you will make more friends around the world and locally by wearing that pin. And also it'll get you out of a jam once in a while. So that's why I'm still in Rotary after 60 years, and I'm proud of it. I'm glad the good Lord kept me alive this long. But Kathy, where are you? Or Jim, see if you've got a 70-year plan, because I plan to get the next one. Thank you. you, dear.
Thank you.
Is that all right?
That was
I
good.
know it's long, but
That was okay.
it's been a great life. The more I look back on it, and I think I've been very fortunate.
Have you given any thought to your legacy, given your interest in history? How would you like to be remembered?
Oh, I'd like to be remembered as for service above self. I think I've lived that life pretty well.
The Rotary motto.
Yeah, it's
Your
Rotary's
motto.
motto. I've lived that, and I love being a storyteller. People stop me on the street and say, "Aren't you Clint Mauk?" I mean, my God, who likes that? Doesn't like that kind of fame? Well, they've been one of my lectures someplace, and then people call and said, "Are you still doing this? Would you give a talk to my group?" As I say, they call up all the time. People I'd never heard of. Samuel Mason Jones came to this country from Wales as a little boy with a third-grade education. And he arrived in this country and grew up somewhere. Nobody seems to know how and where he grew up, but as a teenager, he went to work as any young, uneducated boy would do. He would work in the lumber yards and the sawmills and the coal mines, in the oil fields, the factories, wherever a kid could get a job. And that's what he did. He got mostly interested as he got into his early 20s in the oil business. And Sam Jones thought that was going to be the coming thing. And as you remember, Ohio was quite a oil area. Sam Jones went down to Lima area, not Ohio, and he messed around working in the oil fields. And he finally got to a point where he could dig his own well. And would you believe this? Jones hit the largest oil well ever recorded in the history of Ohio. The largest, most productive oil well in the state of Ohio was Sam Jones. He started to make a lot of money. And then he formed the Ohio Oil Company. You remember the Ohio Oil Company? That was Sam Jones. And then he sold out to Standard Oil. And now he was really rich. Now I'm going to tell you a story about what I consider a very fine Christian gentleman. And Sam Jones came back to Toledo, and he started a business, an oil-related business called the Acme Sucker Rod Company. Some of you may even remember it, but the Acme Sucker Rod Company made some kind of a pole-like thing that obviously sucked oil out of the mine, or the well, somehow. And that's really all I know about it, and that's probably all you need to know about it. It was a successful product. But the thing that was different is Sam Jones, now mind you, these were hard times. Toledo was in a recession. We're talking about 1896. Times were brutal. Sam Jones started this factory, and he paid his people $2 a day, which was twice as much as everybody else was paying. And everybody else was paying $1 a day for a 14-hour day. That was the standard work day, 14 hours. Sam Jones paid $2 a day for an 8-hour work day. He invented the 8-hour work day. Nobody knows this. I don't know why they don't know this. Then he did something even more radical. He hired women at the same pay rate as men. So wonder if they didn't hang him. Same rate as men. Then he built a nursery in the factory to take care of the children of the women who he had hired at the same rate, $2 a day for an 8-hour day. Then he built a lunchroom and served hot lunches free to his employees. Radical. 1896, remember this. He built a playground and a park outside the factory where they had bands come in and music for weekend celebrations. Then he did some more radical things. He gave his employees health insurance. Now, mind you, we're still talking about 1896. Then he gave them a pension plan. Then he gave them stock purchase plans. After 6 months working there, you got a 1-week paid vacation. I mean, this is radical, radical thought. This man. Of course, people loved him. He had one more policy I didn't mention. He had up on the wall, do unto others as you would do unto them. He didn't have any time clocks, and he didn't have any time slips. Radical thought. Now you know how he got the name Golden Rule Jones. He followed the Golden Rule. Principles before profits was his slogan. Golden Rule Jones. Well, needless to say, you know what happens. You get a guy that good, that looks that good, and everybody loves him. The politicians got a hold of him. It started out with the Republicans. I don't know what the difference between the Republicans and Democrats back then was. Doesn't make a difference. The Republicans talked him into running for mayor. And of course he got elected. He got elected with about 70% of the vote. Everybody loved him. Nobody didn't like the Golden Rule Jones. What's not to like? Amazing. Of course he got elected. And the first day he was in office, in the mayor's office, and he sits there, and all these politicians, or whatever you want to call them, sitting them around him. And they said, Mr. Mayor, now here's what you're going to do. And he said, no, wait a minute. I thought I was the mayor. You're the council. Well, it's not exactly the way it works. We're going to tell you what to do. And they said, that doesn't the way I do it. They said, well, it is, Mr. Mayor, and you just hear us out. Now, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to close the bars on Sunday. Ministers don't like bars to be open on Sunday. Well, now you have to know that Golden Rule Jones was a teetotaler. He never had a drink in his life. But he sat there and he said, I'm sorry, gentlemen, the bars stay open on Sunday. The working man has no place to go for recreation. You guys got your country clubs and you go over there and you play golf and you drink and whatever. The working man has no place for recreation. The bars stay open. Now this is radical. Then they said, well, all right, if that's the way you feel about it. But what you really got to do is you got to get all those prostitutes off the street. They're all over the place, and the public is complaining. He said, okay, just tell me, do I take them to Cleveland or Detroit? Well, they didn't have any answer for that. He said, okay, I'll tell you what to do. I want you to go out and find 2 of the worst prostitutes, and you bring them to my house. And they will come and move into my house, and I will teach them an honest trade so that they can go out and earn a living, an honest living, on one condition. Each one of you takes one home too. That didn't go over very well. But one day, in those days, the mayor used to fill in for the judge if the judge was out or someplace. So one day, Mayor Jones is sitting as the judge, and they brought before him a man who had stolen a loaf of bread. He fined everybody in the courtroom 10 cents and fined himself $1 for living in a town where a man had to steal a loaf of bread to live. Well, That all sounds very nice, but when it came time 4 years later to run for re-election, the Republicans didn't want any part of him. They weren't going to sponsor him again. And the Democrats aren't as dumb as they look either. They said, we're not going to sponsor him. So he ran as an independent. Got over 80% of the vote. He said, nobody likes me but the people. Nobody likes me but the people. He ran a total of 4 times for mayor. The fourth term in office, he died in office. The entire city of Toledo, about 55,000 people at that time, went into mourning. 55,000 people demanded the right to follow that hearse out to Woodlawn. They were all over the lawns where they lived. The entire town was draped in black. Every light was off. The town was literally shut down, and everybody in Toledo went to that funeral except the 8 guys in jail who weren't let out. Isn't that amazing? He was an amazing, amazing man. In many ways, he wasn't perfect. He didn't drink, but he wanted the bars to be open. Of course, he didn't approve of prostitutes, but he would take 2 of them into his house if he could teach them an honest living. One of the policies he established was that if a criminal was wanted, and you know how they used to put the posters in the post office, was wanted, they got the posters in Toledo, if that man came to Toledo to hide out, as long as he didn't bring a gun or other problems with him, he could stay here as long as he wanted and hide out till it was safe to go home. That was Golden Rule Jones' policy. Now here he's contributing to the delinquency of criminals. But that's the way he felt about people. If they're not going to cause any trouble here, let them spend their money here. Not a bad policy. So anyway, I think I've spoken enough. I appreciate your kind attention. You're obviously interested in the same things I am, and I appreciate that. Thank you.